Well, it's Motivational Monday, and we have a very special show for you today, right here on See Hear Love. Because we're not actually looking at a scripture per se today, but we're actually going to be interviewing some amazing young women about one of my favorite topics, the church. We have two guest hosts and my co-host Joanna talking about the church and why actually they're working full-time in church ministry. Because some of you are watching going, what are they doing? But I think this is going to be a good conversation for many of you viewers and listeners who are thinking, I don't like the church. 2, it's irrelevant. 3, I'm angry at it. 4, they've hurt me. 5, they don't do anything in culture. But we're going to, in a sort of Christian word, redeem, but not even that, but give you some insight and inspire you to love the church. Maybe for you, again. Here's the thing. They are all under 40, under 30-ish, and they are actually millennials. Joanna, Cara, and Cassandra, millennials. And millennials are 25 to 35 years old in that sort of generation, age bracket. But let me share with you about these stats I pulled up from the Barna Group on millennials, on your age group. They say that 59% of millennials raised in the church have dropped out. And only 2 in 10 Americans under 30 believe attending a church is important and worthwhile, while 35% of millennials have an anti-church stance, believing the church does more harm than actually good. And though these statistics can be alarming, I'm so encouraged by these women around the table who are in full-time ministry. Cara Overholt, Director of High School and Middle School Ministries at the Church on the Rock in Hamilton, Ontario in Canada. Cassandra Matthews, Spiritual Care Director and Worship Director at St. Andrew's United Church in Niagara Falls, Ontario, on the great side, on the Canadian side of the Falls. And Joanna Lafleur, who you know, our co-host, but she's the Creative Communications Director at C4, and that's an associated gospel church just outside of Toronto. So there's a lot of expertise around the table. So today's going to be different, and we're hoping to motivate you to reconsider and reimagine the church with us today. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
The table and floor is yours to talk all about the church. But I want to ask you, Cara, especially. I just said some really sobering and tough facts about your generation, about the church, and that they're not going. What's your concern? How do you feel about that when you hear those numbers?
Honestly, it makes me upset, and it makes me frustrated a little bit, because I've grown up in a church, and I've grown up in a church where God was very much experienced. And I have friends actually who have fallen away from God because they have fallen away and they don't love the church anymore. And so it frustrates me, and it makes me sad, and it makes me angry. But I don't think that should then push us to say, well, then church is done. Let's just forget about church and let's try something new. I think that there's things that we can do, and there's hope to see a new generation of Jesus in church. If that makes sense.
That's good. What are your thoughts about these statistics? Because they sound to me, as a Gen Xer, so sort of, before millennials, I'm like, wow, that's a high number of 59%. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm kind of excited, to be honest. I feel like we can bring some fresh energy. I look at the early church and think we can learn a lot. They didn't have buildings, they didn't have resources, but they had the gospel, and they had Jesus. And so we can reimagine church. It doesn't need to look like what it looked like in the 60s, but I'm kind of excited that we have the gospel. Let's take that and run with it and create something new.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's sobering, right? As you've kind of already said, it creates a seriousness to the work that we do. It's not as easy of a time as it was. It also will probably get much, much worse. So it creates an urgency within me to do the work that I do, and to be excellent at doing it, and to learn and network with as many people as I can who are doing similar things, so I can be better at what I do. And when I say network, I mean both for my own development, but more so that we can piggyback or run with each other.
Well, that's good. I guess my question, I think, for a lot of people is that here you are, bright, smart women, and you've decided to go into full-time ministry work, vocation, job. it's not one that when, you're sort of checking off the list when you're in high school, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I want to be in full-time ministry, making tons of money with all the perks.
Making bank.
Yeah, making bank, traveling the world.
Totally.
Let's just be honest. And all of you in ministry are like, right. So what made all three of you, what made you decide to go into full-time job, vocation, ministry at your church? What did that for you?
Well, if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would be doing this, I would have been like, no way. But it was really a calling.
Okay.
And so I didn't really choose it. Well, I chose it in the sense that I sensed a call and decided to trust and to go forward with it. And I feel like I've been led each step of the way.
And when you say sensed a call, what does that mean for people who are like, what's a call mean?
It means that there was like a fire in my belly that said I needed to pursue this, and just a knowing and a peace about going in that direction. And there was like tension, like there was sort of like a, oh no, like this can't be for me, God. Like there was sort of a conversation and sort of a, this can't be, but I chose to trust and go forward.
But what was the motivation when you looked at the church, right? Because you could have really done anything else, but the call was there, but what was it that attracted you? Like to be at church Sundays, your Christmases aren't your own, neither is Easter, you're on call at night. I mean, really, essentially, this is an all-encompassing job. This is not like a 9 to 5. This is like your life.
I think it was my love for people and my love for God. Yeah.
Love for people.
And willingness to sacrifice.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Cara, what about you?
Yeah, my story is a little different. I grew up in the church, and my dad was a youth pastor, so I'm a youth pastor's kid, that's why I'm a little strange. Yeah, no, I'm a youth pastor's kid, and he took me on all these like speaking engagements when I was a kid. So I was a baby they passed around, and I just grew up in it. And and I remember seeing so many lives transformed, and I remember hearing so many testimonies of like, this is my life before Jesus, this is my life after Jesus, and that we don't serve a meek God, we serve a very powerful God, and he actually is in the business of changing lives. And I still remember this conversation. I was 14 years old, I was in a car with my dad, we're driving down the road, and I remember I looked at him and I said, Dad, why would anyone want to do anything other than ministry? And like, as a young kid, I just saw lives changed. And I think for me growing up, and then I went into school to be a youth pastor, it's been kind of been immersed in youth ministry. And I remember just like, I don't want to do anything else. Like if I want to grow old and see God change lives through the lives of teenagers, because I think, I'm passionate about teens, but I think that's where they are making their major life decisions. And so if we can instill the love of Jesus, if we can instill him as their first love for the bride at a young age, and actually give them like a great foundation to fall back on, then why would I want to do anything else?
Amazing. Jen, how'd you get into ministry? Oh my, this will be another show.
We have all the time in the world later to get into the details, but I wrestled with it for a long time, and I didn't come from a context where I saw a lot of women in leadership. So one of the biggest wrestles for me was there's this chapter in a book from a woman author where she says, help, I'm a leader stuck in a woman's body. And I so resonated with that as I'm not so old now, but as a younger woman coming into my adulthood, because I didn't know what to do with the leadership skills that I had, the ministry giftings that I had, the preaching and teaching giftings that I had. So at the time it was a big wrestle, and both an intellectual wrestle, a theological wrestle, but also the laying down of the ideas I had. I had my first degree as a business degree, so I was heading it towards business and marketing direction at that time, and ultimately felt that the church was sort of the isolation from the thing that we really were supposed to do as Christians, which is actually be in and amongst people. So it was separating me from that, I felt. So I had to wrestle with that for a long time.
Good wrestle. I'm glad you wrestled it and now you're in. It's good. Challenges as women in church leadership. I always find that an interesting question to ask, because you're all in different, you're in youth and sort of middle school ministry, you're in spiritual care and also in worship ministry, and you're in a lot of the creative direction of your church. But in those different areas, challenges, and specifically as a woman, because I think there are some unique challenges we as women have within our church context.
I can give you an example. Sometimes when I'm working in a long-term care setting, someone will say, I need someone, a nurse will say, I need the chaplain, I need some spiritual care. And I'll say, oh, I'm here. Oh, no, like I need a pastor. And so there's sort of this idea that I don't fit the mold, but I recognize that there is no mold, and that I fit God's mold for what the giftings that He's given me and the call that He has on my life. So, so sort of there's struggle in that sometimes, but it's being strong enough to stand in who
Does
God
that
made me
bother
to
you?
be.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it bother you that they assume that?
It's a hurdle to overcome. No, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be part of the change and part of helping people recognize that women are called to ministry.
Beautiful. Because how do you protect yourself from that? Because growing up too, even for myself, when I'd be speaking at churches or even going to Bible college, there was this thing about gender-wise as a woman, and I remember having to kind of like fight that all the time, and then prove myself, and then prove myself again that I was equal. To men. And it was like, but don't you believe in gifting? I mean, why is this a gender issue? Why is this about gifting? How have you sort of reconciled that? How have you kind of kept going and said, okay, God, it is a call, but how do you just make sure that you're always sort of on track and positive about the call?
I am surrounded by strong women in leadership. I'm blessed. I think my denomination might have sort of broke some of these barriers long ago. The United Church of Canada, there are strong female pastors, and you mentioned networking. I think that's important too, to surround ourselves and sort of empower one another.
Yeah. That's good. Cara, what about you? What are some of the challenges?
I've actually been in a really neat place of my church is pretty young, and so I haven't had too much opposition with my church, but with my family, actually, to be honest. My grandma comes from a close Brethren background, and so if I were to say that I was preaching on a Sunday, let's just say, stuff would hit the fan. So let's just say that. So I don't. But because I want to honor her, she loves Jesus. We have the same faith. Just some of the nuances are a little bit different. And so trying to learn to walk out, okay, people that I love very dearly don't see my giftings as biblical. And so I still have to learn how to love them because they're my family. And so learn that, okay, what's most important in this? Really, whether I'm in leadership in the church, the biggest thing is the gospel, and the biggest thing is I love my family. So I don't really necessarily bring up women in leadership necessarily in family, gatherings at Thanksgiving. But I fully believe that women should be leading in the church. So I haven't had much opposition in the church, to be honest, which is very thankful, but more in my family.
Joanna, what about you? Has there been some challenges?
I've had people, ask me if you work at a church, are you the secretary?
Yeah. I'm minister's wife. I got that recently. Are you the minister's wife?
No. Yeah, I've had that a few times. But I think by my personality, I choose, now that I've worked out the issue for myself, I don't really let it be a barrier in my own work. And there's things that there's maybe sexist comments or whatever that can happen in any industry that a woman works in. I don't think that's unique to this. I think I'll find there's these little moments thinking about what I wear on stage. Like even here while we're sitting here, we all wear these lapel mics, but none of us have lapels because we're not men. So there's a lot of things in the industry that we work in that are suited to men. And who wear like a suit jacket, and we don't have those. So that's just like a silly little example.
That's a good point.
Of something that we have to adjust to, and you just make a joke about it and you move on.
Yeah. That's good. So I've heard some of the sort of challenges, but you're still in the church. You're still working time and time again, 50 hours a week, 90 hours a week, because you love the church. Why is it so important? I mean, for those who really struggle, and I'll be honest, there are times, I've been in the church all my life, and there are moments and seasons where it's been a struggle for me, where I don't want to go. I like Sundays. There's Sabbath, right? Yeah. And you don't want to go. You want to sleep in. And you think church is just hanging out with friends all the time and whatnot. I mean, this is the kind of conversations I'm having with my own friends. Why to you is the church important that you have given your life to her?
I think that our culture around us constantly makes us forget about who we are and that we are loved by this great God who has steadfast, merciful love for us. And we forget because there are many messages of people telling us who we are and what we should be. So I feel like the church has a unique opportunity to remind week after week. And I want to be part of that, of reminding people of that gospel of who we are and who God is.
What has the church done for you, Cass? Like, what you serve and you give out, but what has the church that you go to, St. Andrew's United Church, what has the church given to you in your own journey of faith?
A sense of belonging, people to look up to and model the faith, a place where you can be held accountable. Those are kind of the big ones.
Ooh, those are
spiritual
big.
growth.
Who wants accountability? But I mean, honestly,
why people don't go to church.
That's why people don't go to church, exactly, for accountability.
Yeah.
But that's a good one. And what do you mean by that? Like, expand a bit. Accountability for what?
So that we're living a life that is worthy of our call. And so friends in the church, our staff, we have a great staff team who are here actually.
Yes, I see them all out there.
You know, we hold each other accountable, and yeah.
That's good. Cara, what about you?
Whew, if I get teary, I'm sorry, but
okay.
I told myself I wouldn't do this.
No.
The church is the hope. And what the church has done for me is life is really messy. Life is very messy. And the church has come beside me, and I just see how God transforms lives. And I love our church because I see people come in who are either on their way to God or who've been in the church forever, and I just see them wherever they are, see God reach in and transform their lives to look more like Him. And it's through people, it's through, like you said, accountability, it's through people coming beside them and saying, listen, it's not perfect, life is messy, but like the gospel is Jesus died, for your sins, but also that you could have life to the full, so that there's this Zoe life. That we can experience His presence, that we can have transformation in our lives. And so I think the church is incredibly important for so many different reasons, and I think part of it is for transformation. You're forced to be with people you don't like. Like, honestly, we're like a lot of our society.
Good point.
Our society tells us whatever makes you feel good. Moralistic therapeutic deism, right? God is there to make you happy. Honestly, it makes me a better person.
I mean, beyond like we meet a lot of people who talk about I do church sort of with my crew over here by myself, or with these little group of friends, or in a coffee shop, and that's a part of church. But I think it's an amputation from the body. You're not part of the larger thing. We aren't in a context where there's only 5 Christians in our town. We have an opportunity as Canadians to be in context with larger body. And I think often at the root of a decision to separate from that is selfishness. At its root, there is hurt and there is pain and there are struggles of all kinds that need to be addressed, but it's ultimately selfish because the church needs you, and the scriptures are so clear about it. The church needs you to be part of it in the body.
Absolutely.
How dare you go away from it? And there's nothing new under the sun. In Acts, we see that they gathered in homes and they gathered in temple courts. They went small into that gathering. I'm so glad you do it, like that small thing that you do with your friends, but then they also go to the big place, small and big, and small and big.
And spiritual gifts are like meant for the church, not just for us. So they were meant to be experienced in community.
We could talk about this all day. I have one last question, because I know that you're going to stay with us and come back on Wednesday to share some more thoughts. But as we finish up here, what is your hope, not only for your church, but for the church for your generation? I think we just need to hear young women rally and cheer on the church and the hope for it. Because it's not going away. We don't want the church to go away. You've just said that it's important for you individually, but it's important for our communities and for our nation. What's your hope? And really encourage, because I think as people are listening, they need to hear the hope of the church.
Yeah.
Cass, what do you think?
My hope is that it continues to be a place where the gospel is proclaimed. And I think that whether our numbers decline, it's okay. I think what's happening is the millennials that are still striving forward have this authentic, huge faith in this big God. And so I think that there's lots that we can still do. So my hope is that we keep going.
Let's keep going.
I love the part in Revelation where Jesus is walking amongst the lampstands and saying, I love this about you, church, but this is what you lack. And there's one part in Revelation 2, he says, you've forgotten your first love. So my heart is just that the church in Canada will remember her first love, and not be just these empty shells where people go to Sunday, but they actually go to get their lives transformed and fall back in love with Jesus.
It's good.
Yeah, I feel really hopeful about innovation in the church. I think there's all kinds of opportunities with things like this in our hands now to reach people, connect to people, disciple people, evangelize, all those words through things like technology that actually begins to connect us more across the whole nation. I mean, I see, if we don't change it, as I said in the beginning, I think it will get worse, which is why I feel urgent about what we do. And the church I see is a church of every church should have thousands of people in it, packed out with 5 services, because people can't wait to be there, because all through the week they've been engaging together on their phones, they've been engaging together in community, and are being discipled together in a way that actually transforms our nation.
Yeah, amazing. Here's the thing for me, when I look at what's the hope of the church, it's you. Cass, Cara, Joanna, and I'm getting all emotional, but it is. I really am encouraged, and why I wanted you to come on today is to show viewers that there are young women loving and committed to seeing the church be the church that transforms lives, that gives hope, that makes sense to people, that leads them to the person of Jesus and in personal relationship with Him. And so I'm inspired by you. Thank you. I know that we could be talking about this for hours, but I know you're coming back on Wednesday to share with us a little bit more about church and how See, Hear, Love works that out. But I know also that you're going to be blogging. Forrest, you're going to be writing some thoughts about what we've just talked about, because the conversation just can't end here on the show, but we can kind of continue it online. So for more information about Cara and Cassandra, head over to our guest section on our site and click on the link, and you will have their bios and their beautiful faces and their blogs up there. And to you viewers, thanks again for your thoughts, and we'll be continuing this conversation on Wednesday as well. Make sure you check out all of our resources on our site, blogs, videos, and favorite things. And thank you for spending Monday with us. If you have any questions, let us know. But I hope today in our conversation inspired you to revisit and reimagine the church again. Bye-bye.